Welcome to the Keeping IT Real podcast. This podcast features honest and transparent conversations about what it takes to manage corporate technology and expenses today. Each episode, listen to true and personal stories from IT professionals who are working hard to make sure their business stays connected and competitive. I'm your host, Jethro Castillo, and let's meet our next guest. I am joined by Andrew Nuxoll, the Managing Director of IT Operations and Cybersecurity at UNICEF USA, a nonprofit organization that fights for children's rights in the United States of America. Andrew is a seasoned IT operations and cybersecurity professional with years of experience and has even recently spoken at a Cybersecurity for Nonprofits event earlier this year. Andrew, thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Well, we'll talk a lot about tech today, of course, but obviously tech doesn't take over all of our lives. So when it's not tech, what kind of fills your time in your life?
Like to do a lot of home improvement projects. I like being outside. I do a little bit of everything, like woodworking. I like sports.
Kind of a jack of all trades. When you go outside, are you talking about like camping? Or are you talking about hiking? More just like being out there?
We do fishing, boating.
Nice. That's
walking,
really cool.
Running.
All of it. Well, how did you get started in the world of IT? Was it a relatively normal sort of progression, or did it kind of fall into your lap in a different way?
It was a little strange. So going way back in elementary school, I was first introduced to computers. So I hope it's not too long. First introduced to personal computers in elementary school. And they were still relatively new. Most people didn't have one at home. And I was taught with a program called Logo, which was a early programming language. And the most exciting things that you could do with that was, with a number of lines of code, get the background color to change or get a cursor on the screen to move from one point to another. We never really accomplished anything from a programming perspective. But ironically, there seemed to be so many rules about computers and they didn't want to break and there weren't experts on how to fix them and so on. And I remember the people there saying, teachers, don't touch the ESC key. Don't touch the escape key. That halts everything. System needs to be restarted. It was not good. Didn't want to touch it. So fast forward many years between my elementary school and up until late into high school, personal computers still weren't that popular. Only wealthy people had them. And finally, I think probably my senior year of high school, we started getting access to a computer lab and you could type a paper on a computer as opposed to a typewriter and so on. But it's still kind of foreign territory to most of the students. And when I went to college, computers started to become more of a necessity if you wanted to type a paper. And by that point, I was interested, a nerd at heart. I wanted to get more into it. So long story short, I bought my first personal computer when I was in college, and I had a number of problems with it. And I guess because of my origin with them and don't touch the escape key, I assumed I was doing something that was causing these problems. And I didn't have the money to take it and have it repaired or have somebody help me with it. So I just started buying books and reading them and trying to figure out how to troubleshoot these things on my own. And after about 6 months of doing this, I realized I have a lemon computer. These components are failing. And about a year after that came out that the manufacturer that had produced my computer had been doing so with refurbished and remanufactured parts, weren't disclosing that. They were having an extremely high fail rate. So that's how I really got started with IT, was out of necessity, not being able to afford someone to help me with my computer. I bought books, studied up, I figured it out. And then I went to the store where I bought it from and was looking for a piece of software. Someone thought I worked there because I was dressed in my work clothes, and they said, "Hey, can you tell me about this?" And I started to explain what they were asking about, and the store manager overheard me. Said, "Where did you learn all that?" And I was like, "I bought a piece of crap computer from you guys. I've had to learn how to fix it." And he's like, "Well, how would you like a job?" And so I ended up working at this retail store. That evolved into fixing somebody's computer that worked at an IT configurator, and the rest is history.
Wow. That's a really cool story. Were you always like that though? Before the computer, were you always someone who tried to solve your own problems and was always trying to figure out how to do it yourself?
That was just part of how my parents were. It wasn't. They were trying always to challenge me to figure something out. I like to learn things. I like to do things. I like to get my hands dirty, and was always helping if Dad was doing something around the house or fixing something, either by choice or by force. I was there helping, and learned a lot of things. And I think I was just an observant kid, so I'd watch something and see it happen, and then want to try it myself or do it. So that just kind of translated into keeping involved with those types of things.
Yeah, and then of course you mentioned when you're not doing tech, you're doing home improvement projects and you're woodworking and all of that. And so even now, a lot of do it yourself.
And most of that was learned through observing, my parents doing it. Or at this point in time, there's a lot of things I say all the time. There are so many things I don't know what to do, but what an outstanding tool YouTube and all these other sites are. If you don't know how to cut a dovetail and you want to make a drawer, there's thousands of videos you can go out with people that are doing it with butter knives because they don't have the tools to do it. You can learn how to do some fascinating things in creative ways. And there's so many resources if you're willing to put the effort into looking for them.
Oh, absolutely.
To accomplish all types of things. And so, yeah.
Absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of just the information economy, if you will, we have now of just, it's at our fingertips. If you want to learn, you have no excuse anymore. You can learn. And I think there's a beautiful thing to that. That is no longer hidden behind a paywall,
right?
An education paywall. Now what that paywall, what that education gives us is kind of a tailored education, right? It's experts in the field who have done it before, plus that diploma at the end, if we're talking about college. But otherwise, if you want to learn for the sake of learning, we can run wild. And I think that's a really cool thing that we can do nowadays. Absolutely. Yep. Well, you mentioned, back then you kind of bought books to learn. Nowadays, with all the information that's out there, you mentioned YouTube as one. But how do you keep up with tech nowadays to know what you need to know to make business impact?
Yeah, a number of different ways. I mean, anything from reading social media feeds, reading the feed on LinkedIn, seeing what challenges other organizations or individuals in my network are experiencing and learning from that, all the way up to still books. There's still a lot of good books out there that, I won't say I'm entertained by going and buying, the latest CISSP manual and thumbing through that. But from a reference perspective, there's some good books that it's nice to have around that you can refer to, and especially if they have a good index, it's nice to have a library of things at your fingertip. And there's a ton of great free content available, not to mention inexpensive pay content. I won't particularly plug a platform. If someone wants to reach out to me for recommendations, I'm happy to give them directly, but there's a number of platforms that for say less than you're spending on a streaming service per month, you can get a lot of good information. You can, to the point that you could get certified on a lot of important subject matters, if that's your thing. And if not, just, it's nice to have something to just learn. If there's a topic you're interested in, there's a myriad of free training classes on YouTube and other social media, not to mention what's available if you're willing to pay $10, $20 a month.
Right. I think that's the other thing about that information economy that's really cool is that people can start to charge for their own, anyone can be a teacher, right? And of course that means we have to vet and decide which courses are high quality and which ones aren't. But at the end of the day, it's like we get to share our knowledge and expertise with each other and grow together. And I think that's a really cool thing. And even if, like you said, it's just a $10 subscription a month, Netflix is $15, right? Spotify is $15, right? And so the fact that you can have an unlimited amount of information at your fingertips, tailored and curated, for $10 a month, let's say 15, even if it was 25. I mean, think how much we paid for our academia growing up. And it kind of becomes I appreciate you bringing this all up because it reminds me to be very grateful of where we are at now, for sure.
And I don't want to undermine the education system.
For sure.
I have strong feelings about it. It's not for everybody, but does, if nothing else, lead to a very well-rounded individual for somebody that goes through it. But it's not for everybody. And if you are just wanting to hone your technical expertise, you can do that for pennies on the dollar compared to what you can go to school for. And a lot of times, I'll say, despite my previous comment that it makes someone well-rounded, if you go to school for a degree in, let's say, information technology, why do you have to take a history class? I'm not saying history isn't important. The only way to learn from your mistakes is by understanding the past, right? But is that really going to make me better at coding? So you're paying for a lot of extra stuff. There's value in it, but is it really helping someone in their career? Not necessarily, maybe, but each profession isn't the same. I mean, I'd say for a teacher, knowing history and knowing science and knowing whatever, in addition to whatever your chosen subject matter is, probably going to be much more beneficial than to someone that really just, wants to be a programmer or a developer.
Right. And then they have to go to that school and then feeling like they're mismatched, right? Or like, oh man, I'm not good at school. I'm not made for school. I'm not good at it. I'm going down a really slippery slope, but it can get to the point where you feel like you're not good enough as a human being because you don't fit into the mold that you're expected. And I also want to clarify before people are like, oh, Jethro, I have nothing against education in general. I just think that there's not a one size fits all for how we are supposed to learn as individuals. And I do hope that we get to a point in our academic sort of environment where it becomes rather than one size fits all, tailored to what your interests are and what your needs are and where you're at in your life. Because by the time I was 18, there were people who knew what they wanted to do for the rest of their life. And I didn't. Yet all of us were asked to go to the same exact place, which was college. And I think that lends itself really differently. You hear a lot of people who go to college and then do something completely different for their job than what they majored in. And at that point, then the college then served as a diploma and, of course, everything that comes with that college experience, right? That well-roundedness, like you said, that social experience. But had we had a different way of approaching it, we might have been able to glean even more value out of college, right? If it was later on in life, if we had known what we wanted to do, if it was a place where we could actually explore and be free. But I hear what you're saying, and it'll change and shift over time for sure.
There's many different ways to become well educated or proficient. Not just in a given field, but as a member of society, and isn't a prescriptive thing. It isn't the same forever.
Absolutely. Well, I would say we went off track, but I think IT and education are very, very hand in hand in the sense that when you're in tech and IT, you are constantly learning. It is almost a requirement in the IT world because it's moving
many certifications. It is. I have a handful of them that you want to maintain on continuing education as part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said, though, you've been in IT for a while. You grew up before personal computers were really big. What is your favorite part about tech and working in IT all these years?
I think my favorite thing about it is just expansive, the amount of things that you can do. So even within, if you say information technology as a whole, what one person in information technology does and another person in information technology does totally different. I mean, I'd say some parallels to like a doctor, a podiatrist and a dentist, both are in the medical field, so to speak, but they have a completely different set of expertise. They can probably have intelligent conversations with one another about things. But it's nice that there's so many different avenues that fit so many different strengths and personalities within IT. And for that matter, I mean, if you become, I won't even say proficient, but competent in any particular area of IT, it can translate to another area that might be more interesting for you or or an evolution for your skill set. So I really just like how many options there are with IT, how it can be different every day, and you can really just evolve as a professional in the different areas that are out there.
What excites you the most about where IT and tech is going? And at the same time, what worries you or concerns you when it comes to that?
Answer to both those questions is the same. It's AI.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence is going to open up so many opportunities. I don't foresee it as a death knell to skills or jobs. I think it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be something that opens doors and just increases efficiency and so on. There's so much that can be done with it. I think we're just scratching the surface. And in a lot of cases, people don't even know the right questions to ask about what can AI do. Amazing. Same time, it's scary because we don't know everything that we can do. We don't know what to expect. There's already numerous documented cases of hallucinations or incorrect responses from generative AI, or incorrect conclusions drawn as part of LLMs, or you name it. There's a lot that still needs to be worked out. There's risk involved with it. And so I think that as exciting as it is, I hope that people can be a little bit more intentional and careful with the way that they approach it and how they choose to utilize it, just so that we evolve along with it instead of not understanding where it's going.
As a cybersecurity person, why is it that it feels like, and maybe you can correct me, maybe this is not accurate, why does it always feel like the bad guys unify and use new tools much, 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 much faster than the good guys do? It always feels like they're one step ahead with new technology, and then we're trying to catch up and be cyber secure, if you will. And maybe that's an incorrect way of looking at it.
No, I mean, I think it's fair to say that. I mean, part of it is the risk appetite that exists with a threat actor as opposed to your typical general user. They don't care if something goes completely belly up. They're not going to lose their job over it. You know, you're unsuccessful with some sort of malware distribution or campaign that you went on, no big deal. On the opposite side is someone that is a cybersecurity practitioner or careful about the way that they implement something. There's so many things that need to be understood, and it's a monumental task to protect against every type of attack. It takes a long time to develop a good defense. And because of the nature of, I'll just say, of security posture, cybersecurity ends up being reactive much more often than it should be. And because of how willing and easy it is for attackers to adapt, and the weakness of humans, so to speak, the number one threat vector is the human element. So there's a lot of threat actors and hackers and criminals out there that understand that. They understand how to push people's buttons, how to use emotions, and so on. And they're good at it. And overcoming the human side of things is extremely difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you are the first nonprofit organization guest, if you will, but also UNICEF USA is kind of a very, I'll just say you have a very unique position and a very unique take on IT and tech from where you're coming from. And I definitely want to jump into this, so I'm excited to. Why don't you kind of tell us about your IT team and environment, how long you've been there, how many team members, and ultimately, how do you support UNICEF USA?
Yeah, so I'll talk about our technology division as a whole as opposed to just my part. But, we're around 30 members on our technology team, about 10% of our organization. And, we support every aspect of technology and the overall mission. So our efforts to make the world more equitable for every child rely on a number of different teams working together, whether it be fundraising, social media presence and marketing, and so on. So, we do everything from helping to enable web presence and websites, security and functionality of that, supporting that, to just the more nuanced and specific tasks that any individual user might need to be able to accomplish their goals in supporting the mission.
And how many employees rely on your team of 30, and where are they?
Yeah, it's around 300, and we're all U.S. based. So our organization is the U.S. Fund for UNICEF is the previous name for it. So we are the fundraising arm in the United States, a national committee. There are about 39 total national committees, if I'm not mistaken, that all operate independently of UNICEF Global, but do the fundraising in their respective countries that goes directly to UNICEF Global. So it's a little bit more complex than I'm making it, but in essence, in order for most countries to maintain a nonprofit status, they have to collect their own, the donors and donations from their own country. They can't accept it from outside sources. And we're the nonprofit fundraising arm for the United States. There's one for Canada. There's one for UK, and most, I'll say, larger countries throughout the world have their own national committee, and we all collectively support the UNICEF Global Mission.
Gotcha. And you said 300 employees, and they're just all across the United States, all over?
Yeah. We're spread out.
Yeah. What is, you talked about the tech team as a whole, but specifically, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I mean, it varies. A lot of times it's working with teams to develop strategy, other times policy, governance, sometimes get my hands dirty and helping with specific technical issues. Could be a little bit of everything, but anything technology related, could potentially fall into myself or anyone on my team's lap, and just do our best to execute.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be the most recent IT project, but what's kind of an IT project that your team took on that you're relatively proud of, or kind of left a big impact on the organization as a whole?
Well, there's lots of projects. The most recent, large project I'll say that we've been undertaking is just the formalization of our project management office so that we can be more effective with projects we take on, more intentional, help with prioritization, increase efficiency throughout the organization, and so on. So we've been reframing and rebuilding our project management office, and I think we're already seeing outstanding results from that. And I think going forward, it's going to be just a huge benefit for the organization.
So you are still in the middle of sort of fleshing this out, but it's already yielding some good results.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that we're in the 11th hour of the project per se. So most of the work has been done now. It's just really putting a bow on it, tightening things up, making sure that everything's effectively communicated, and the aspects of organizational change are really addressed, and people understand what's taken place, how to utilize it, and so on. So we're wrapping it up.
Why did you decide that now was kind of the best time to take this on amidst other potential priorities? What made this kind of we got to do this?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've talked about since I've been at UNICEF USA, and we've taken, I'll say, incremental steps along the way at getting there. But it's just clear there's so many opportunities for improvement throughout the organization, and so many things that we want to tackle and we think that we can make meaningful progress on. But having a mechanism to effectively prioritize those and handle the organizational change management around it, and so on, we really need to formalize that. So that's the driver.
During the first 10 hours, if you will, because you're in the 11th hour, the first 10 hours, kind of what were some things that went well during the implementation of this project, and what were some things that posed a challenge a little bit?
I mean, I think for the most part, it was well thought out and worked with a partner to help, supplement some of the staff and documentation and aspects of things in the early part. And it really went Well, I would say the big challenge, and it's just an adjustment. It wasn't like there was particularly resistance or anything of that nature. It's a lot of change and huge adjustment along the way in terms of how things were being done. It just had to be understood, and we had to adapt to it. So, having additional meetings on the calendar at an organization that many already feel has a lot of meetings seemed, oh, well, this is kind of counterproductive. I thought we were trying to streamline things, but it was more an effort to get everyone on the same page, develop some tight processes, have good communication and collaboration throughout the process. And so there's a lot of work along the way that felt like it, for some, was in addition to a huge number of tasks that they were taking on. And it took a little bit of time to see the light at the end of the tunnel for some people. And that's just something that goes along with any change. Adapting and changing your work style and your priorities along with the project and adjusting is key to making it work.
Yeah, and I want to dive into that a little bit. When it comes to change management throughout your career, what have you learned to make change management a little bit easier, a little bit better? What sort of communication has to happen? What sort of shifts need to happen for change management to be as seamless as possible? And we know it's never seamless because that's the name of the game, right? That human element of change is really hard for all of us. So,
right. It's something that I've been much more involved with recently. We use the ADKAR model, which it's an acronym for awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. So the principles are that all along the process of in the life cycle of a change, the first step is making sure that people are aware. The second part, desire, is what's in it for me? Why is this happening? Why does it need to happen? Knowledge, understanding exactly not only what is happening, but how to make it work and continue with it. Giving people and empowering them the tools they need to perform the tasks that are involved with the new thing, the way that things are going to be working going forward. And then finally reinforcing that, making sure things are working as expected and adjusting as necessary and so on. So I think that's not the exact same way that other change management models do it, but if you think about it from a very high level, all of those things are very important and make sense. I'll say from my perspective, just boiling it down, what I've learned in my time as a change practitioner and a champion for change is context is so important. Can kind of sum most of those things up into context, understanding what the change is, why it's happening, why it's important, how it's going to impact people, etc. Giving that information and sharing that and communicating effectively about what the change is and how it's going to impact the organization is really key in making sure it's successful.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool answer. Thanks for that. Really, really helpful. This project management office is kind of wrapping up and it's going to be full force soon. So with that being said, what kind of are the project's goals that are next moving forward once this is in place? What are you hoping to accomplish with a more streamlined project management system?
Yeah, it's a long, long list of things, that really just drive donor engagement, drive the mission and getting our message out throughout the world as to what we're doing and why it's important and so on. So a number of different projects that support that. Big output of this project is an intake process. So if someone has an idea or a project or something that should be evaluated, giving users a more consistent way to submit those ideas or that project so they can be evaluated and have the correct resources assigned and be very thoughtful in the way that it's managed. So that's a big step forward and something that's going to help us in the long term.
Sometimes it always feels like when I talk to IT, it's a little bit disconnected from the mission because it's an extra step, right? You're not directly necessarily, unless you're a tech company, you're not necessarily directly doing the product that's facing the customer, but you are enabling the people who do that within your organization to do it better. And so when you went around back to saying, oh yeah, and then our project management system will help us intake ideas better. I mean, I'm sure that's going to go a long way for all the people who are probably requesting ideas. And now you're able to vet it, triage it, prioritize it, and let people know more clearly when things are supposed to be rolled out.
Even at a tech company, IT, and in particular, so I'll say internal IT,
sure,
and cybersecurity are so often perceived as a bottleneck. It's hard to get away from cybersecurity being perceived as a bottleneck because most likely and regularly the approach to cybersecurity is implementing controls or making changes or adjustments, and no one likes change, especially if it seems like it's just for the sake of change. And a lot of times, I think, especially in the cybersecurity side of things, either the communication that goes along with changes that are made is ineffective, or sometimes you just don't want to share all the details or why things are done the way that they're done. Don't necessarily want to give away all your secrets and techniques as you develop a cybersecurity program and posture. The same with IT, not necessarily on the communication piece, but a lot of times in the interest of enabling the organization, there's a lot of work that needs to take place, and you want to do it right the first time. You don't want there to be rework. A lot of times it leads to excessive meetings, or what seems like excessive meetings, or it's a slow process because there's so many downstream systems that could be impacted by a change, or interconnectivity, integrations, et cetera, that could be impacted. We had a conversation, or I was part of a conversation a while back, and it became pretty evident that in most organizations, don't think that staff realizes how much behind the scenes work has to go into supporting the organization from a technical standpoint. You think about something as easy or as simple on the surface as just hiring a new employee, what has to happen to make that work. From a technology standpoint, it's pretty impactful. Even if you have a lot of good tools and systems that help with user provisioning and imaging of a new PC and assigning accounts and so on, there's a lot that goes into getting those systems set up, keeping them effective and maintained, and then training the users that come in on the technologies that they're going to be using and so on. So while in the end, I think the goal should definitely be, and typically is, that IT is an enabler for the rest of the organization, it's not always perceived that way by the people that are closely involved.
And have you found ways to kind of counter that? Or is it just kind of, that's the name of the game, kind of have to ride with that and as best as possible?
It all comes down to communication. I mean, most people, especially if they understand why things take place and take the time that they take and the steps that are taken, if they understand that and it's effectively communicated, people are generally understanding. You say, hey, I don't want to necessarily draw a map of all the different things you're impacted by test X, but we have to be very careful about and share information and effectively communicate why things are done the way they're done. It's generally well received and understood. I think the challenge becomes when you have a large organization. How do you communicate that? You send a mass email to everyone that they're probably not going to read because they're getting 500 other emails a day. Do you post it in Teams or Slack or whatever collaboration platform you have, and people subsequently ignore it because they have 500 other messages that come in that are directed to them, and more importantly, how do you effectively communicate? And that goes back to most of the time change management can help. Especially if it's project-based, but communication is the key, and being able to tell the story and explain in real-world terms why things happen the way they happen are generally accepted by staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a simple answer, but such a hard thing to actually implement, right? Communication is key, but good communication is really hard to come by and really hard to implement because, like you said at the very beginning, we're human, right? And there's so much unpredictability to the human element, which is why when people understand it and are able to take advantage of it, it's very scary because they're able to rein in the unpredictability of humanness. And, we're all so resistant to change, and we all respond to change so differently. And we also all have different incentives, right? What convinces one person that a change is good might not make any sense to another person. And so it's not just general good communication, it's specific good communication. And that's really, really, really hard. And that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, and I used to ask it, like, if you could have anything you wanted to help you do your job better, what would it be? But I think it's easier, at least for me, to look at it as more, what are some, because, no matter who you are as an individual, we all go through pain points and struggles and wish things were a little bit easier, a little bit better in some ways. What are some pain points that you were personally experiencing as a tech professional that I guess you would actively be trying to work to figure out so it makes kind of working easier?
Yeah, it's hard to narrow it down to one thing. I mean, I would say the pain point I've had, and it's not unique to my current position, this is everywhere. I always have in the back of my mind, man, if I just had a few more people, it would be so much easier. But it's not unlike, I should say, the analogy I would have is you hear about salaries, for example. There have been many studies that how much money does it take to live comfortably, and what's the ideal salary for someone. And it really comes back to how you utilize the resources that you have has much more impact on whether or not you're happy than how much money you have. So on my side, I would love it if I had 3 or 4 more people, but if I had them, we'd be doing more work, sure, but I think it would just lead to people being like, oh man, we're getting so much more done, and we were able to accomplish task X, Y, and Z. Let's throw task 4, 5, and 6 out there also. I mean, the resources get consumed. So I really think that it's easy to say, oh man, if I had more people, I'd get more done. There'd just be more work that came along with it that supported that. So it's not always an easy answer. People have good ideas, and when work gets done, they come up with more good ideas and so on. But I always feel like, man, if I had more people, that'd make things better. I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, right. It's a very kind of self-aware sort of request of like, I want this, but is it the right thing to be asking for? Will it really solve the issue that I'm really wanting, which is I want all these things done? Won't that just create more things to be done? And yeah, I get it. That's
and it's not that we don't want to do more things, but I think effectively prioritizing, understanding what needs to get done. I wish I was better at that. That's my pain point. It's me. It's not somebody else.
Yeah, for sure. And I imagine on top of everything else you have to keep track of, right? And IT is a very busy job. It's hard to make time and balance everything in general. And so having the time to prioritize for the organization is, so much is asked of IT now more than ever before. And you got to keep everything running. You got to grow. And then you also have to transform and not stay stagnant. And it's just being able to balance all of that is really tough. I have 2 more questions for you. The first is, and maybe you don't actually have, we'll see if you can answer this, but what is it like being in IT for a nonprofit versus IT for a not nonprofit? And the reason why I said you might not be able to answer it is if you never ventured outside the world of nonprofit, then you wouldn't know. But
so before I came to UNICEF USA, I've been here around 4 years. My first 20-ish plus years in IT were all in the private sector. Some of them with publicly traded companies, have a lot of experience in the managed service arena. So had a lot of preconceptions about coming to a nonprofit. And so when I was originally approached with this opportunity, I had some stereotypical thoughts about, oh man, it's so hard already in my current job to get budget allocated or to get a business case that's understood and approved, to get things done. There's this stigma that goes with nonprofits. I don't know that I want to make it even harder on myself going somewhere. Then, I had conversations, ultimately was offered the opportunity and took it. And what I found was nothing like that. I'm not saying it isn't like that at any nonprofit, because I talked to a lot of colleagues that work at other nonprofits, especially now with some of the, work groups and shared channels that I have with other nonprofit leaders. So it does happen from time to time, but the bottom line is it's much more organization specific, I think, than it is industry specific. So I think it is more typical that at a nonprofit, you don't have the amount of resources that you need, or it might not be as easy to get budget, or purse strings just might be a little bit tighter than they are in a private sector organization. Not always true. And I think that if you look at the economy now and the way that business is right now, you'll find there are a number of private sector companies that are experiencing the exact same things and have the exact same challenges that are typically attributed to nonprofit. So from that perspective, I had some, I'll just say, incorrect presumptions and didn't really understand the narrative. I think that I was comforted when I spoke with the individuals that recruited me here and had those conversations with the leadership team throughout the interview process, and they were honest and things worked out like I expected. It's just important to understand the organization and not take for granted what you're stepping into. So asking those questions as a potential employee at the time that you start somewhere is important. If your job's going to revolve around, in any way, managing budget, understanding what kind of budget is available, what kind of challenges do you have with the current budget, what's the process for modifying or adding budget, and so on. So all of those things really were not what I expected here. What I will say about nonprofit, and I'm not sure, again, that this is unique to nonprofits. I think it's, again, organization-based, but if your name's out there and you're a big organization, you're going to have a target on your back from someone. People, again, human nature, especially when you think about threat actors or cybersecurity vulnerabilities and the way that attackers take them. If they can get a big name, oh man, it's great for them. It's likely going to result in higher monetization of the attack that they carried out. It's going to lead to, unfortunately, in a lot of circles, street cred. Hey, my group was able to hack the government. They were able to hack Microsoft. We pulled off this amazing social engineering attack against such and such organization. So, there's that. And I think that it's unfortunate, but there are certain groups and individuals that see a name like UNICEF USA and they're like, oh man, that'd be a good one to exploit. But is that unique to us or the Red Cross or Microsoft or Netflix or Home Depot? No, it's not. I think it goes along with, if you're really good at doing what you're doing, and I think we're outstanding at raising awareness of child rights and supporting equity of children throughout the world and moving that mission forward, people are probably going to know your name more than they are somebody that, don't want to knock on any other nonprofit organization. That's not the point. But if you have a mom and pop running something out of your house, you're not going to have the same type of target on your back that a huge multinational organization will.
For sure. And I think I appreciate that answer because, just because it's always simplified to for-profit versus non-profit, but there are still very much similarities between the two than is immediately noticeable. So for you to kind of explain the nuance of, well, this is what it could be, but also you see it in the for-profit sector, and vice versa, is very interesting. It's like saying, I always liken it to music where we go, oh, I love pop music, but pop music is simply the music that's popular at the time. And so it's just, we can call it this thing, but really what within it, nonprofit, there's still nonprofit finance, there's still nonprofit health care, there's still nonprofit tech. So it's like, it's a really strange, I appreciate you kind of elucidating the fact that, well, it's not as different as you might think consistently all the time. It's not really the final question, but it's kind of just, here's your final stand of any final thoughts, pieces of advice, stories, experiences that you want to share that you didn't get to during the first 50 minutes of this.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk and hope I answered questions. I know I'm not the most eloquent of individuals. like to share my insight and thoughts and hope that people found it valuable. Happy to connect with anyone on LinkedIn if they want to reach out and share anything. I hope they don't reach out just to sell me data destruction or a lot of vendors. If you have something that helps, obviously I might be in here. But I really like to connect with individuals and talk about their experiences.
For
share
sure.
experiences that way.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I will also say that, you said you're not the most eloquent, but you are funny. It's a very kind of like dry, deadpan sense of humor, but it's there and it's very entertaining. I don't know if people have told you that, but I just wanted to say that to me, you're very funny. But again, thank you for your time and your expertise. I think people will definitely take a lot out of this. So thank you so much and take care.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
VCOM Solutions is here to help make your IT projects and day-to-day operations as easy and efficient as possible. If you'd like to see how VCOM can help your organization save time and money, request a demo at vcomsolutions.com/demo. Do you work in IT? Be a guest in our podcast. Go to vcomsolutions.com/keepingitrealguest to sign up. Thanks again for dropping in. Don't forget to subscribe, and you can find us on social media at VCOM Solutions. Until next time.